Hello and welcome. I'm Marianne Fessenden from AMTS, and this is the Nutritionist webinar. For our webinar this month, we'll be taking a field trip and traveling south, where Marcelo Hentz Ramos, our AMTS distributor in Brazil, will give us insight on Brazilian dairies. Marcelo obtained his veterinary degree from the Federal University of Lavras and came to the U.S. for his master's at the University of Wisconsin and his PhD at the University of Missouri. Marcelo is the director of 3R Lab in Brazil, as well as our hardworking distributor. Our plan was to get out on some Brazilian dairies. However, COVID restrictions made this not possible. Depending on how you're listening, you can submit queries through me or my other attending co-hosts. We will read them and ask the presenter for you. After the webinar, the question and answers are complete. I compile, process, and upload to archived videos and podcasts available on the AMTS website under the Webinar and Resources tab, respectively. Please enjoy the webinar and enter questions in the Q&A tab or the chat window as you think of them.
All right. Thank you much, Mary. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a great presentation about Brazil. We're going to talk a little bit about overview about the country, and then we're going to dig in a little bit about agriculture, opportunities and challenges. Then we're going to move about the dairy, discuss a little bit about the dairy industry, and finally showing some data about the biggest dairy farms, the 100 biggest dairy farms in Brazil, what they do. Because one thing you're going to see in this presentation is that it's a very well structured commodity in milk production in Brazil, where few producers is responsible for a lot of milk, and a lot of producers are responsible for not much milk. So basically, we'll see and show for you guys a traditional dairy producer in Brazil that still did not have the opportunity to apply all the technologies, all the knowledge that is available, and increase the productivity, use the right animals, fight heat stress, and make more money. And the professional producers. These guys, they know what they're doing. They are present in Brazil. They are managers. They have business. They know how to work with people, with cows, and with crops, and they make the milk production system to grow. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. Again, thank you all to be here. And let's start a little bit of the outline. Before we move to the outline, I like to always thank people that helped me. Professor Marcos Neves Pereira from UFLA. He was my guru when I went to vet school. He provided some data for this presentation, so thank you so much. USDA, I try to get as much data as fresh as possible. Milk Point, where you have the portal, thank you Marcelo, because they have a lot of very important data, and that's where I get the data for the biggest 100 dairy producers in Brazil. Abra Leite, which is a very important dairy producer association, 100% dairy producer association. Here's a big hug for Geraldo that did a great job for the last 3 years. Today, a very important association that's fighting for dairy producers. And of course for Mary, that pushed me a lot, and finally we're here and trying to really help you guys to understand what's happening in Brazil. And for sure understand that we're very proud to help to feed the world. I'm going to see that milk is present everywhere, and we're a very important player and a very proud player being producing milk all over the world. Okay, here's outline. What I try to do to give a little bit of understanding as deep as possible for you guys. We're going to talk a little bit of Brazil agriculture. First, a little bit of what's Brazil, but very fast. And then we're going to move to Brazil milk production, like I just said before, where few producers is producing a lot and a lot is producing a few. Typical structure of a commodity structure. Then we move a little bit to show what's in Brazil. When you think about dairy production, you're gonna find exactly what you find in US, for example, or Canada. People that know what's going on, know what they're doing, they manage data, they know exactly what they need to do. And finally, some challenge and opportunity. We have a lot of challenges for sure. We're going to discuss heat stress, we're going to discuss our flint corn, we're going to discuss some politics that's important because it changed the world and changed our country, and so forth. However, where you have challenge, you always have opportunities. There's lots of opportunity to produce milk in Brazil. Okay? Before we start the overview of Brazilian agriculture, I know I would like to leave a message about the fine-tune of ruminant nutrition. I have been using AMTS and I've been a distributor for the last 7 or 8 years. We have been helping a lot of nutritionists to fine-tune and work with metabolizable protein, metabolizable energy, amino acid balance, all the minerals, whatever is absorbable, all the effective fiber, fermentable starch, everything that is available in the world. And Tom, Chilukin, and the whole team has been helping us. So when you think about nutrition in Brazil, we try to do the same as the whole world. Okay, so we try to describe the environment well. Here we have a big challenge with heat stress. We try to describe the animal as well. We know that milk production related with solids, fat and protein is responsible for half of the energy of the animal, that energy of lactation, and the weight of the animal. Remember when Tom came here last time, which he needs to come back again, and we're missing him. He showed distribution in a pan of the weight of the animal. So these variables, milk production, solids, and weight of the animal, they impact a lot of the software, of the system, the CPS model. In fact, milk production, impact almost all the variables in the model. And of course, to do analysis. So we try to follow to be as good as the best nutritionists in the world. Analyze the forage, the pasture, the baleage, the hay, the corn, silage, whatever. And with that, we're gonna balance. We use AMTS to find the best diet. Of course, most of the times for high producing cows, the highest income over feed cost, and when we don't need, when it can, lowers cost. So in terms of nutrition, we understand that we try to apply that. It's not different from anywhere from the world. So I really try to focus on what's different in Brazil. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Brazil agriculture. First, Brazil is big. It's a big country, so you can see that almost fit most of the countries from Europe, Spain, French, German, Portugal, and so forth. Has a lot of space. How was Brazil colonized? Mainly from European people in the 60s, from the south. Mainly because here where the climate is very close, very similar to Europe. So they start to colonize, and when they come, of course, agriculture is one of the main things and the first thing they develop. Here they have highly developed agricultural techniques that was slowly moving forward. And here is the main region of agricultural region in Brazil. And most of these people that are here, they came from here. They have sons and grandfathers and granddads and fathers and so forth that was born here. Okay, very important, because now you understand one thing. For example, half of Brazil is Amazon rainforest. I don't want to dig in that. I don't want to discuss that, but we have data from NASA showing that the deforestation and burn and everything from Amazon rainforest, it reduced it in the last year. We are not trying to touch that, but it's very hard because it's very big. It's just as big, it's bigger than the challenge that Mexico and the United States have with their borders. It's very, very big. So to control that, to avoid fires and so forth, is not easy, but we're trying our best. There is no grain, very, very, very few grain, meat, milk being produced here. Most of our agricultural products are produced in Cerrado region. Here, whereas actually I am right here, right now, is where a place of Brazil where it gets flooded once a year. We have to move the cows and all the animals. Here is very, very dry. Is most of the beaches, most of the beautiful beaches in the world are here. It's very, very dry. The government is trying to push some water up and get some desalination water to help agriculture to grow here. Now here you have the Atlantic forest, but the industries and the processing of all the commodities, it will happen here. And now you're gonna see the Pampa and still a lot of Atlantic forest where you still have very strong agricultural production, but we also have a lot of industry present here. This, if you want to take a little bit of take home in the first third of the presentation, this is a very good chart that was produced with data from all over the world. One thing that's important, if you look first, if you see, take a look on Brazil, see this 100% of the area, you're gonna see that 1/4 of the area is for pasture. Only 1/4. For crops, and here I have all the crops: corn, soybean, coffee, you name it, 7%. And that's going to be important because you can see also sugarcane 1% and half for ethanol. That's very important because Brazil is a big player on these commodities. It's only using 1% of the area. So it has a great opportunity to grow, and that's good for the world because these are areas that are agricultural areas that you can plant, they grow, they have a very soil, the soil is very fertile and it's rain. However, it's a country that preserves over 60% of the area. It's not touched. You're going to see that 24% of a conservation unit, 16% protect areas, and 25% in native areas. So one thing about Brazil, we still have a lot of space in area that we can plant that we did not plant. However, with a very small area, we are producing a lot of food for the world. In this chart, it's going to summarize. I don't want to go over all over it, but if you look in the number inside the cycle, is a black circle. You're going to see the Brazil ranking in the world production. So Brazil is number 1 production in sugar. Brazil is number 1 production in coffee. Brazil is number 2 production in soybean. The second country in the world that produces most beef. Then third in chicken, third in corn, fourth in pork, and fifth in cotton. So when you look at the world, and we're going to talk about that, if you consider the world just one country, Brazil is the place where the food is being produced. One thing that's unique about Brazil, and it's very important for everybody to understand, we can grow 3 crops in a year in the same area. That's very important. Let's say we're going to start with the rainy season. You can plant soybean September, October, and when you take soybean out, you can plant corn, that we call safrinha. We still have some rain, but not much rain as we have for the soybean. So soybean was just took out of the land, and then we plant corn, and then we take the corn out for grain or silage, whatever you want, and you plant wheat in the middle during the winter. So in the same area, in the same year, you have 3 crops. This is very common. You're going to be harvest one culture, for example soybean, and few meters behind you're going to be planting corn, or vice versa. Very important. We use no tillage system for a long time. So it's if you see here straw that's left in the field after we harvest soybean, we will plant right there. We don't do any tillage after that. So it's fast, is important, hold more water, and a lot of other things. And after you take this corn, you can plant wheat. And this wheat can be used for mainly for grain. But if you want, you can do billage, you can do forage. You want to do whatever you want to do. One of the important things is how fast agricultural commodity grow in Brazil. Taking a look, for example, looking at Brazil with this blue line, United States and Australia, in terms of beef cattle evolution from 2000 to 2015. See, the rate of growth is very big. Why? Because there is a market for that. When the producers see an opportunity to grow, like I'm going to show for you guys in top 100 producers, they will invest. They will apply money, depending on the politic system. Now it's more stable, but it was not stable. But showing a great opportunity here to grow. If you talk about the 10 biggest large meat industries in the world, you're going to see the number 1 is Brazilian, JBS, the number 4 is Brazilian, BRF, and the number 7 is Brazilian, Marfrig. So we have 3 of the top 10 beef industries, processors in the world. That meaning that there's a lot of meat being produced here. What's the overview of this part? Because that's not the focus of the presentation, but you need this background to understand what I'm going to tell later. Brazil is big, has a lot of land, and it's still a lot of land that's available to agriculture. So we can still plant and grow commodities there. Brazil is a big player in most of the commodities. The use of land is becoming more and more efficient. All the technology that you see in the world is available to Brazilian farms. We can do 3 crops in a year. That's very interesting. You can plant 3 times in the same place. And one thing that a farm in Brazil knows, they need to preserve a certain area on their farm. They cannot plant on 100% of the farm. And that includes a place where it's called Amazon, where it's almost untouchable. We don't plant there, we don't mess with there. It's an area that we understand that needs to be preserved. Milk production. Then we start digging a little bit more about what's the topic of this presentation. Just like I said, is a system where few very professional producers will produce a lot, and a lot of them still need the help, the education, the investment a little bit to get better, to get bigger, and that's what we try to do with education. So now that you understand the Brazilian map, you're going to see that the milk in Brazil is in the central region down. Okay, central region down. Mainly in the southeast region. For example, Minas Gerais, it's where almost half of the milk is produced. Minas Gerais would consider Wisconsin, United States. Almost like Wisconsin. Everything is about milk. It's a very important place, state, where the milk is being produced. And the south of Brazil is where the milk is growing a lot, is growing fast. For a lot of reasons that we can talk later. So when you talk about Minas Gerais, it's a state that is traditional in terms of milk production, cheese, yogurts, and all the byproducts that you can see. Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, São Paulo, Santa Catarina, they're all cities, they're all states in the region that I mentioned in the last slide. One thing about Brazil, and important in some countries in the world, but it's also very important and present in Brazil, is seasonality. So when you see the raining season, the pastures start to grow and the animals will produce more milk. And when you see the dry season, is the other way around. So milk production goes down. What creates a system where we have more milk, that you get paid less, and when you have less milk, you get paid more. That's the usual system. So right now that we are in April, it's in the end of the rainy season. So the tendency is for the milk price to start increasing a little bit. But this year and the last year, because of COVID-19, is very, very outlier. It's out of the main trend here. Because of the corn price, because of soybean price, everything is different. But due to seasonality, the structure of the milk price in Brazil, I just showed to you. Alright, let's start talking a little bit of things that we like. What kind of breeds that are used in Brazil? Mainly Holstein. Okay, you can see the Holstein is the number one, and a crossbred between the Gyr, that's a Boss Indicus, with Holstein, that's a Boss Tauro that we call Girolando, and I'm gonna show you guys what kind of semen the Brazilian dairy producers buy. You can see in the blue bar right here, mainly Holstein. Okay, and the Holstein coming from US, Canada, and Netherlands. Of course, we buy some Jersey semen too, but Jersey is not very important breed in Brazil. Talk about dairy producers or plant producers. You can see we have a lot of them. There is a lot of investment going on here, a lot of new products being developed, but it's dominated by 3 or 4 of them, and that has a very important structure on the price of milk. I don't want to discuss about that here, but if that was more, we have more industry here taking a little bit bigger slice of this pizza, the price of milk would be easier to handle. Okay, one day that I just got from the USDA the last week is that the number of heads of animals that are being milked in Brazil, they consider 16 million heads. But when you make a project and want to see how much product you can sell in Brazil, you usually talk to 2 million heads. So if you want to bring products to Brazil to sell to the dairy cows, the base number is 2 million, maybe 3 million, 2 million and a half. 16 million are going to be a lot of cows that are not specialized. One thing, and I apologize, some of the slides are still in Portuguese. I tried to get the best that I could and still keep them fresh. Here is the percentage of the farms in US that happened in 2012, and how much milk they produce. So 6% of the farm produce more than half of the milk. 6% of the farm produce more than half of the milk. And we told and we knew that was going to happen in Brazil, and did. Now, the newer data would show this number even lower. 16% of the farms in Brazil produce more than half of the milk. These are the specialized guys. More than 1,000, for sure, more than 1,000 liters per day. For sure, more than 1,000 liters per day. So you can see all kinds of products for whoever likes milk, all kinds of milk. Milk with A2, now it's a different protein for people that has a challenge. A chocolate milk, not chocolate milk, cheese, all kinds of cheese, anything you want. You can go to the market, you can walk, you can see cities and travel, and you're gonna see all kinds of things coming from milk, yogurt, all over. And one thing that's important, and I'm gonna explain to you guys how we get paid by milk, mainly by volume. Okay, we don't get paid by solids, but we get discount a lot by quality. So here is bacterium count. The greater bacterium count, the less you get per kilo or liter. Here's somatic cell count. Of course, you get discounted. We try to pass a lot to have a minimum amount and move forward, but we still have a lot to do. And here is the bonus that you can get for protein and fat. However, there's only one milk processor. What I'm trying to show for you guys is that most of the farmers in Brazil, they just get paid by volume. There's a minimum amount of fat, there's a minimum amount of protein, but this system is not applied. It's very good that we have some milk processor that apply this system. So what's the take home about that? First, every city in Brazil has at least one dairy producer. It's common to see milk producers everywhere in Brazil. There are two main breeds, Holstein and the crossbred, that you're going to see a lot in Brazil. We have a milk price seasonality that's going to happen every year for a lot of reasons. It's kind of getting better because of the compost barn, but there's still a seasonality. And there is still a price system that mainly on volume, not still on solids. And then I had the opportunity to wait a little bit for this presentation because I wanted the data from the top 100 dairy producers to be released, and it was released just about last week. So I would like to thank Marcelo Pereira, is the owner of this website, Milk Point, and they do a great job every year. They get a bunch of data. You're going to see, I'm going to present for you guys this data, and they get data from the 100 biggest dairy producers in Brazil. And that's what I'm going to show for you guys of the last year, 2020. Now that's the main focus of the presentation, we can slow down a little bit and really talk about cow. If you go to Brazil and you're going to see the specialized cow where the most of the milkers are coming from, you're going to see black and white animals. You're going to see Holstein. So basically you can paint the milk from Brazil with black and white. The main facility you're going to see is the freestyle. This is a facility that it is very common when you confine animals. Now we have the compost barn, but it's present. And one thing that's almost like behind the scenes. When you see the cows, you don't see how much work, how much error, how much agricultural work is needed behind of the scenes to make it happen. For sure, the forage, it is produced in the farm. Most of them will not buy. So they need to produce forage, and there are some of them, a lot of them, they produce high moisture corn. Not very common to produce their own soybean. They'll buy in the market. So it's a lot of things happen behind the scenes for this milk to be produced. In terms of technology, everything that you see in the world, robots, milk system, extractor, anything, everything, it's available and is in use for Brazilian dairy farms. One thing that I would like to slow down a little bit. These are the 50 or the 40th biggest dairy farms in Brazil. That's fresh. That's from last year. The biggest one is Fazenda Colorado. This farm today is producing 80,000 liters of milk per day. Let me just give you an overview. I went to veterinary school and I finished that in 2002. 2002, almost 20 years ago, a big farm produced 1,000 liters per day. 1,000 liters per day. 20 years later, that thing became 80 times bigger. So when you told Brazilian farms that US farmers were getting bigger, more efficient, they need to, because of the margin and a lot of other things, they kind of opened their eyes and they saw it, and they knew they also need to get bigger. So you have these farms are producing a lot, but a lot of milk. And one thing they're gonna see, they want to grow. They're making money, so they want to grow. That's really good. This is the number one dairy farm in Brazil, Colorado. It's for the heifer, for the grow, it's an open freestyle, and for the animals you're gonna see is a tunnel ventilation with a carousel. So just 80,000 liters per day. Grazing is present in Brazil. Actually, is the most common way to get cows to produce milk is grazing, because it's easier. You just lead the animals there and give some concentrate, they produce milk. However, in the 100 biggest dairy producers in Brazil, it's not very important. Okay, traditionally is very important. You're gonna see a lot of grazing cows in Brazil, but in the volume, you're gonna see that the volume, a big chunk of that is gonna come from animals that are confined, mainly on freestyle and compost farm. That's the thing that's interesting. If you get the milk production for these top 100 dairy farms, year by year, they are growing. And that's good. It's making me happy to see, because they're growing, they're making money, they want to invest, they generate jobs, they produce one of the most important food in the world. That's milk. Milk is used in almost in a bunch of products. So very good. Technology, it's available. Robots, carousel, you name it, whatever. One thing that become more in the recent years, due to some challenge with our energy system that's still not very good, it's solar energy. So a lot of farms are using solar panels to help to generate a bunch of their energy. Also biogas. Biogas is being used a lot. And that's the thing that's important. Well, when you look at the top 100 growth compared to the average or the total production, they're growing more. Why? Well, because they have better management, because they study, they apply better technique, they do use software to balance diet. A lot of them actually use AMTS. They pay attention, they do have a good crop, they know about people, they buy well, they sell well. That's a big thing in Brazil, and I think all over the world. The more you produce, you get a bonus. So to be good in anything, it pays back. You can see that they are growing. Here's Girolando. Is a crossbred between a Holstein and a Gur. This animal, this breed, you're gonna see that a lot in Brazil. Usually, the mom is a Gur, okay, is a Bos Indicus, and the seeming, most of it is seeming, is Holstein. So you make this F1. This is F1. They're very good animals. Okay, and why they are used a lot, why they grow a lot in Brazil? Because you can leave them and they graze and they produce milk in almost any kind of situation. Good animals can be docile animals, and it's important in our structure of milk production in Brazil today. It is present in the top 100, but the most common breed is still black and white Holstein. Just like I said, if you visit the big dairy farms in Brazil, it's just like you're walking in Canada or in a freestyle in the United States. It's just like exactly like I said at the beginning of the presentation. We look for the same things. Like I did an analogy about the effective fiber, metabolized with protein and amino acids. Here's the same. They know the space, bunk space, light, feed management, how many times, and so forth. So it's very similar to what you see in US. Carousel, robots. Very worried about heat stress. It's all present here in Brazil. Here's again the number one dairy farm. It's Colorado. is a tunnel ventilation, and in the end they have a carousel. This farm, you can see the name of the milk here, the brand of the milk. They produce their own milk. And it's very good milk. We're very proud that they have very good milk in Brazil, and they sell for a lot of places in Brazil. So they're growing a lot and make me happy to see. Now, there's a difference between the average daily milk production by region. If you look, for example, in the northeast, where the beaches are, where they don't have a lot of rain, if they have a chance, they can make a crop per year. If they get a little bit of rain, you can see the milk production per cow. When you look at the average of Brazil, because here they talk just looking at the top 100, is very good. Because if you look at the average of Brazil, it's gonna be like 6-7 liters. It's very, very low. But when you look at the top 100, is almost half of what's happened, for example, in the south of Brazil. And I just when I finished vet school, a good average in the farm, it was 20 liters per cow per day. Today, 30s and 40s. For sure, we can bring the 40 kilo average is a good average. 30 is not anymore. But keep in mind that here you have a lot of cows. Okay, it's easy to have a higher average when you have less cows. When you have these big dairies, it's kind of becoming a little bit harder. But one thing that I need to talk about is not average, but lactation. How much they're producing lactation. When you look at the south, this is Brazil top 100. 10,000 kilo. This is Brazil top 100. It's a very high number. It does not represent Brazil. Okay? If you look the average of Brazil, maybe 3,000. It's low. It's almost like two scenarios: a professional and the one that need help. We're helping. But when you look at the south one, 13,000 kilos. It's a lot of milk. Okay, it's a lot of milk. And go back to the northeast. Here where you have the crossbred, here where we have the big challenge of this missing rain, a big challenge of food, and they still produce milk, but they will not have the long lactation as a Holstein over here. Here is the Holstein that we have. You're going to see excellent genetics. You're going to see excellent cows, very good, excellent cows in these farms in Brazil. And here on a number, I know is in real. 1 real today is 5.5 real is equal to $1. Okay, it's income over feed cost. So you see that income over feed cost is a very good number that we look when you balance diet. It did grow. Okay, I don't know if they have the inflation here or not, but it's just a general number. But it shows the opportunity to make money milking cows. Now, one thing they also show, they have the numbers, so they know the milk, the cost of milk. It's an average of the year. So also the price they get paid varies, but because of last year of COVID-19 has a lot of challenges. I show you a chart, and because they produce a lot of good milk, I know that they should be getting at least 2 reals per liter. So you can see that more than half of them. You take a look at cost of production here, 1.7, 30 cents. But if you take a look at the cost of production, 130 or 40% of them, they make 70 cents. Remember, it's 5.5 real for $1 per cow per day. It's a good margin. That's why they want to grow. And now they will grow because we have a better government to help us. This is a discussion that we have since I went to school. And it's not going to end because we see discussion from China, Israel, Europe, Canada, US, Brazil, Argentina. Of course, when you produce milk in a pasture system, it's the cost of production can be lower. Okay? There's no doubt of that. However, the volume, the milk production of these cows usually is also lower. So whatever you leave as a profit in general, and I don't want to say what's right, what's wrong, but in general is lower than if you confine these animals in a freestyle in a compost barn that increase the cost of production, but you also increase the production. Okay, it's just there's some numbers for here for you guys to see and compare. I don't want to discuss that. These are just data that are there, showing that for sure 67% of the farms of one top 100, they do not use grazing as the main forage. The main forage for these 100 dairy farms is corn silage. Is the most important forage that we have to produce milk in Brazil. But grazing is present. You're going to see some grazing, a lot of grazing in Brazil, and a few of them in the top 100. Main facilities, just like we said, freestyle, half of that in the top 100, and become very common compost barn. And you can even close that and make a tunnel ventilation or cross ventilation, or just leave it as a compost barn. Just like I said, here's a picture of compost barn. This facility changed the industry of Brazil. To have an idea, an average farm saw an increase of 5 liters per cow per day, just moving the cows from the pasture, from the mud, from the bugs, from the sun, from the lack of water, to here, to discomfort. The time budget of an animal, the time that the cows can really lay down, ruminate, and produce milk. Actually, this is a new tool in the AMTS, the management tool, that correlates with really all of the work that Tony Luke did with Hickrant, with how much time the cows stay laid down and how much milk is being produced. Like I said, main breed, Holstein, okay? And Girlando is the second one. It's a crossbred between both. And make me very happy, because if any industry or any business not make money, you don't want to grow. But if you look at from 43% up to 34%, more 70, 80% of them, they want to grow at least 20% next year. And some of them want to grow 50%. So that's very good. In the scenario that we are, unfortunately, in the scenario that we still have COVID-19 present, they are looking forward to grow because things are good. That's like I said before, there's a tunnel ventilation in a farm, the top on 100. So the idea is to pass the wind here. That's why they have the block, so the wind can go down and actually pass the wind through the cows and take this heat out in the other side of the barn. Growing calves. Most common system is not this system. This system is we call the Argentinian system. We have it's not like a group. They have almost like individual. It was adopted in Brazil for a lot of farms. Very good, can work very well. However, the most common system is still their little house. Okay, but why it can be open? Because we don't have snow in Brazil, and that will protect from the sun, and that will protect from the rain that really impact calf development here. However, after we come with the automatic feedings, grouping since milking, grouping since they're calves become very common. So not only when they're growing, but since they're calf, there are also a lot of farms that do not use this little house anymore. They're starting to group these animals. Okay, so what's the take-home message for these 100 top 100 dairy producers? These guys know what they're doing. They have technology, they have genetics, they have management, they know people. Just let it work. They will grow. Another thing that we saw is that freestyle and compost barn are where the milk is being produced. It's not grazing. They're confined animal with corn silage, the main source of forage. All the technology that's present in the world, it is available to them. And one thing that makes me really happy is that it makes them money to produce milk. That's a very important food. Very good, because they will grow. Okay, and almost to finish here, what are some challenges and opportunities to produce milk in Brazil? Of course, every challenge gives you an opportunity, and I think I need to finish that showing that it's really not easy to have a business in Brazil. Any business, because of their government. The history of our government is to tax us a lot, and we don't know what's going to happen. All of a sudden there's a new law, all of a sudden there is somebody asking for a new stamp, and things change really fast. So it's not easy to have a business in Brazil, not only producing milk, but you have a supermarket, you have anything. It's hard. Okay, we are under a lot of tax situation, and we're gonna show you that it changed a lot because in the last 13 years, and there's all data all over showing that there's a party in Brazil that's called PT, and if you look at the translations, the Works Party is the left party that is considered the most corrupt time. They stole the most amount of money since the history of capitalism in the world. Think about that. They stole a lot of money. If they continue in the power, but we change, unfortunately, and it was really sad for me to say that, Brazil would be in the way to become a Venezuela, and maybe a Cuba, or maybe a North Korea. Unfortunately, that's what's happening for our really good friends Argentina, that not did have the opportunity or the chance to change their government to be an honest government, because we will be very happy to pay tax if this money come back to us. That is very important. There's a money up there. One big challenge, I think, with any commodity, but specifically for milk, is import and export. That changed a lot. This fight is a big fight for the Abraleite. Geraldo, the Brazilian Association, is doing a great job. Our Minister of Agriculture is doing a great job. But if you look at our Minister of Economy, for him, the word's flat. It's just one. There's one country in the world. We need, and he's opening the Brazil to make business with everybody, because when you make business, our GDP grows. Heat stress. Think about it. If you take the animal out of the heat stress, you give them comfort, you give them opportunity to be milked, you increase 6, 7, 5 liters in a cow per day. There is no technology, there is no mineral, there is no additive, there is no anything that you can do to increase that much milk production. So heat stress is a big challenge to produce milk in Brazil. Our cows produce a lot of milk, but we learn it. And that changed the structure, that changed the pricing, and that changed the seasonality a little bit, because during the hot season we would have a great amount of milk being produced, but now it's even greater. So we have a surplus of milk that we need to understand what to do. And that's why a lot of these farms are trying to do their own milk, they're trying to dry milk, they're trying to work around. But that's good, because a lot of milk that's been producing due to the fight with heat stress. Corn is our main source of starch, period. Coming from corn silage or coming from corn grain. However, our corn is flint. It has more prolamine. The digestibility is way lower than the corn in US. Okay, that's why it gives you less nutrient or less starch being absorbed, less fermentable starch. It's harder to produce milk, because the same amount of corn silage will not produce the same amount of milk in US and in Brazil, because we have a really tough time breaking that prolamine structure and make that available to the rumen. Time in silo, the time that this feed stay in silo, either corn silage or the high moisture corn, helps a lot break this prolamine and increase the 7-hour starch digestibility from 50% to 70%. I got some data from Ferrareto showing that. I did not want to go deep on that, but one of the technologies that help us is the time that they stay inside a silo. Opportunities. Now, and a big right, a guy that's in terms of politics in the right side, we have a guy that's honest. He put his team to work together for Brazil, and is really helping Brazil. So we're really proud. One of the first time in my life that I'm proud to have a Brazilian flag and to sing our song, because now things are. That's why even with the COVID-19 scenario, a lot of these milk producers they want to invest more, because they know that now the government is good. The government is going to help, and that's just like a background to grow your business. Another thing, land. Land is not a problem. We use 70% of the land in Brazil to grow our crops. So we have a lot of space of land that can be agricultural. It's not land that's just rocks or you cannot plant anything. Most of it, 95% of it, you can plant things there. So it's not a problem. Commodity is not a problem because we produce a lot of corn. We produce a lot of soybean. However, the challenge is that the world buy from us. And even if it's produced here, we sell outside of Brazil. And one thing, whoever had the opportunity to read that book, The World is Flat, he said right there that if the world was one country, China would be where the things would be produced, US would be the brain, and Brazil would be where the food is being produced. And that's reality. I think this book has like 10 years. I was still in grad school in the United States at 10 years, and that's real. You see, the most 90, 80, 85, 90% of technology is being produced in Silicon Valley, United States. Almost everything that you think about in your life is being produced in China, and the food is where it can be produced and where it can still grow, because we can still explore productivity that can grow a lot. Our numbers are not the best when you compare to Israel, when you compare to Canada, when you compare to US, the lactation, and a lot of things, days in milk and stuff for that. So the food, it is being produced here. Take home message: Brazil is a big player. It makes us proud because we want to help to feed this world. In terms of commodity, if you think about corn, soybean, coffee, meat, chicken, swine, whatever you name it, we are number 1 or number 2 or number 3 and growing fast, and we can still have space to grow. Milk is like a traditional thing in Brazil. It is being produced everywhere. Every city has at least one person that's producing milk. The top 100 dairies in Brazil, it's a farm that you can visit, and it's going to be very similar to whatever in the United States you have in the United States, and they want to grow. That makes us very happy. Our government now is on our side. That makes things really, really exciting. So I really would like to thank again Dr. Marcos Neves Pereira. He was my advisor when I was in a veterinary school. He really helped me a lot to start to understand the ruminant nutrition. He's a very important guy for the Brazilian dairy industry. I'd like to thank USDA for all the data. These guys are wonderful. Milk Point for providing the data for our top 100 dairy producers. They have a lot of good data there. So Marcelo, thank you. One association, that's Abraleite, that's only producers, milk producers. Only milk producers can participate. There's nobody from the industry. Now they have 3, 4, at most 4 years, and there is an association with more numbers in Brazil. Number 1 or number 2? I don't remember. Geraldo, it is the president, and he stays in Brasilia, the capital. Our capital is over there. So he's fighting to import. He's fighting to get stamps from cheese. He's fighting to decrease the taxes to import new technologies. This association is very important for the Brazilian dairy industry. And of course, Marion helped me almost on a daily basis. We start a course, AMTS course in Brazil. It's doing very well. She's helped me a lot. People are learning and understanding how to use AMTS, and they get a couple months free to use the software. And the idea is they learn and they apply and they make this productivity of these farms to grow, because everybody will make money. So thank you, Mary, so much. And of course, all the AMTS team. You've been with them for the last 10 years, 9 years, and to me, it's been I'm very proud to be a part of the team. Well, I hope I help you in these 50 minutes to understand a little bit about Brazil, to understand a little bit about the agricultural part. Brazil is a big farm. Period. To understand how much and how is milk being produced. The big chunk of that you can plant black and white is come from confinement and people that understand about management, people, cow, and environment, because they know how to fight heat stress. Okay? With that, I'd like to thank you all. Have an excellent day, and I'll be here to try to answer some questions. Thank you. period, coming from corn silage or coming from corn grain. However, our corn is flint. It has more proline. The digestibility is way lower than the corn in US. Okay, that's why it gives you less nutrient or less starch being absorbed, less fermentable starch. It's harder to produce milk because the same amount of corn silage will not produce the same amount of milk in US and in Brazil because we have a really tough time breaking that prolamine structure and make that available to the rumen. Time of in silo, the time that this feed stay in silo, either corn silage or the high moisture corn, helps a lot break this prolamine and increase the 7-hour starch digestibility from 50% to 70%. That I got some data from Ferrareto showing that. I did not want to go deep on that, but one of the technologies that help us is the time that they stay inside a silo. Opportunities now, and a big right, a guy that's in terms of politics in the right side. We have a guy that's honest. He put his team of to work together for Brazil, and is really helping Brazil. So we're really proud. One of the first time in my life that I'm proud to have a Brazilian flag and to sing our song because now things are. That's why even with the COVID-19 scenario, a lot of these milk producers they want to invest more because they know that now the government is good. The government is going to help, and that's just like a background to grow your business. Another thing, land is not a problem. We use 70% of the land in Brazil to grow our crops. So we have a lot of space of land that can be agricultural. It's not land that's just rocks or you cannot plant anything. Most of it, 95% of it, you can plant things there. So it's not a problem. Commodity is not a problem because we produce a lot of corn. We produce a lot of soybean. However, the challenge is that the world buy from us, and even if it's produced here, we sell outside from outside of Brazil. And one thing, whoever had the opportunity to read that book, The World is Flat, he said right there that if the world was one country, China would be where the things would be produced, US would be the brain, and Brazil would be where the food is being produced. And that's reality. I think this book has like 10 years. I was still in grad school in the United States at 10 years. And that's real. You see the most 90, 80, 85, 90% of technology is being produced in Silicon Valley, United States. Almost everything that you think about in your life is being produced in China. And the food is where it can be produced and where it can still grow because we can still explore productivity that can grow a lot. Our numbers are not the best when you compare to Israel, when you compare to Canada, when you compare to US. The lactation, a lot of things. Days in milk and stuff for that. So the food, it is being produced here. Take home message, Brazil is a big player. It makes us proud because we want to help to feed this world. In terms of commodity, if you think about corn, soybean, coffee, meat, chicken, swine, whatever you name it, we are number one or number two or number three and growing fast. And we can still have space to grow. Milk is like a traditional thing in Brazil. It is being produced everywhere. Every city has at least one person that's producing milk. The top 100 dairies in Brazil, it's a farm that you can visit, and it's going to be very similar to whatever in the United States you have in the United States, and they want to grow. That makes us very happy. Our government now is on our side. That makes things really, really exciting. So I really would like to thank again Dr. Marcos Neves Pereira. He was my advisor when I was in a veterinary school. He really helped me a lot to start to understand the ruminant nutrition. He's a very important guy for the Brazilian dairy industry. I'd like to thank USDA for all the data. These guys are wonderful. Milk Point for providing the data for our top 100 dairy producers. They have a lot of good data there. So Marcelo, thank you. One association that's Abraleite, that's only producers, milk producers. Only milk producers can participate. There's nobody from the industry. Now they have 3, 4, at most 4 years, and there is association with more numbers in Brazil. Number one or number two? I don't remember. Geraldo, it is the president, and he stays in Brasilia, our the capital. Our capital is over there. So he's fighting for to import. He's fighting to get stamps from cheese. He's fighting to have decrease the taxes to import new technologies. This association is very important for the Brazilian dairy industry, and of course, Marion helped me almost on a daily basis. We start a course, AMTS course in Brazil. It's doing very well. She's helped me a lot. People are learning and understanding how to use AMTS, and they get a couple months free to use the software. And the idea is they learn and they apply and they make this productivity of these farms to grow because everybody will make money. So thank you, Mary, so much. And of course, all the AMS team, AMTS team. You've been with them for the last 10 years, 9 years. And to me, it's been I'm very proud to be a part of the team. Well, I hope I help you in these 50 minutes to understand a little bit about Brazil, to understand a little bit about the agricultural part. Brazil is a big farm. Brazil is a big farm, period. To understand how much and how is milk being produced, the big chunk of that you can plant back black and white is come from confinement and people that understand about management, people, cow, and environment because they know how to fight heat stress. Okay? With that, I'd like to thank you all. Have an excellent day, and I'll be here to try to answer some questions. Thank you.
Before we get started with your questions, I want to introduce next month's seminar, and a special webinar series that we're holding, my co-hosts and this year's sponsors. For our next webinar, we're going to travel back north for a presentation by Dr. Vadim Bekchevnikov, our distributor in Russia. Vadim has received his DVM from Don State University and Peryovsky I'm just killing these, Rostov Oblast. He is one of the busiest people I know. In addition to acting as our distributor in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, Vadim manages Nova Lab, a Cumberland Valley affiliates associate, and manages and consults on dairies in Russia, Ukraine, and here in the US for Beaver Creek, an 8,000 cow dairy in Michigan. Marcelo, unfortunately, was not able to travel to farms in Brazil, as he mentioned. And if you're following the news, you know that presently Brazil is experiencing severe COVID infections and is under extreme lockdown. With Vadim's webinar, we'll have the chance to tour Russian and Ukraine dairies. He said he has already done some videotaping, and Beaver Creek as well. So join us next month on the 13th at 9 and 6. Additional featured webinars this spring will focus on sheep nutrition. Our first speaker in March was Masoud Anoun, one of the founders and the present director of Adina. He gave an excellent talk on lamb fattening in Europe. In our second webinar is April 15th with Philippe Hassoun. That is next Thursday from INRA in France, and that will focus on milk sheep in the French tradition. We will wrap up our sheep feeding sequence on May 20th with a discussion from John Winchell of Alltech. John has been a longtime AMTS Pro user and has been working most recently with our small ruminants model. John's going to be taking some of the information we learned in the first two webinars and demonstrating how he applies them in the program. We are very pleased to have John join us as a co-host for these first two webinars. And in that first webinar, he asked a lot of really good questions, given his experience. Email me at webinars@agmodelsystems to sign up for any of these webinars. As you know, these webinars take a lot of work and cooperation. The webinars are organized and produced by AMTS, USA, and Global. We were joined this morning in our webinar by Elena Bonfante of our AMTS Italian distributor and partner
in dairy innovations, and Bill Prokop. Elena informed me that she was going to be a little late, so Bill is standing in for her mostly. We also have our distributor in Turkey, Dr. Huday Kavustaran, and he is also he is going to be he has joined us for this morning. In the evening, we are usually joined by Paula Tarillo of Afina, and also our distributors in China, Sean Lee and Vadim Bekchebnikov in Russia. We're especially grateful to the sponsors, the generous sponsors who make it possible for us to get great speakers and manage the program. We thank our gold sponsor, Arm & Hammer, Animal and Food Production, #ScienceHearted, the Canola Council of Canada. Learn more about feeding canola at canolamazing.com. Adina, experts in animal nutrition with expertise in plant bioactives, and Proteca, transforming the future of farm animal health. Our silver sponsors are Ajinomoto, superior nutrition through amino acids, and Virtus, both of whom have sponsored us from the start. Also, the Forage Analysis Labs of Dairyland Laboratories and Dairy One, both have affiliates around the world. Adaseo, ruminant nutrition solutions to ensure animal performance, and micronutrients feeding the future. Our bronze sponsors this year are AminoMax, Purdue Agribusiness, Origination Inc., Phileo, Balchem, and the Milk Group. Each of these companies support education and research worldwide. We hope that you consider them for your formulation decisions. So now I am going to ask my co-hosts to open up their mics and say hello. And we are also joined by Tom Taluki and Lynn Gilbert of AMTS. Tom has traveled to Brazil several times, so hopefully he'll be able to ask some really good questions of Marcelo or point some things out. And Lynn and I both work with our Brazilian workers. So everybody, hi, Marcelo, can you hear and speak okay?
Hi.
Yes. Good morning. How are you guys?
Good morning. Thank you. How about you?
Good morning, Huday. Good morning,
Thank you.
Bill. All right. I am asking people to put questions in the chat window and also in the question window if you have any. But right now, if this doesn't put people too much on the spot, we have started this tradition of sort of Bill and Tom and the speaker, which would be Marcelo at this point, sort of exchanging a little bit of talk on some of the points that the speaker made. First of all, Marcelo, what an excellent introduction and coverage of the Brazilian dairy industry. We all really enjoyed it. To remind you, Marcelo, if you want me to go to any certain slides, just let me know. I'm going to now go to the view so that you can tell me which slide to go to.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, very good.
Yep.
All right. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I don't know which part of the world you are, but it's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm part of the AMTS team for, 10 years. And it's been a pleasure every single year. It's a great company, it's a great software. They really develop a great tools for their producers. And we have been using that for a long time, having applied science, specifically deep science in farms. So to me, it's a great pleasure to be here. Tom has helped me since the beginning. Tom knows a lot of Brazilian industry, the challenges, the heat stress, the corn, the management, and so far. So what I try to do in this presentation, because I know that you guys are come from different backgrounds, is just to explain what is Brazil in terms of how big it is, how things are done here. It's really a powerful place to grow crops, and animals need to eat something. So we need to produce something. And then I try to dig in a little bit about the dairy industry. The dairy industry is very similar to the beef industry, for example, where you're going to see people that are raising cattle on pasture, that they don't fertilize, that they don't do anything, they don't get even closer to get on calf from a beef cow, and so it's very not so good. They did not have the opportunity to get educated. But you're going to see the other side of the industry. They're very professional. Everything that's done on the feedlots around the world, it's done here. It's the same thing in the dairy industry. So you come to Brazil, you're going to see very, very simple management and cows that are not producing even like 2,000 or 3,000 kilos in a lactation. And you're also going to see very high qualified people, just like an industry, just like a business. And I try to show you guys that with that, our main source of forage, it is corn silage for sure. And our main source of non-fiber carbohydrate, it's starch and basically from corn. Sorghum it is important because of second crop is the great risk of not raining enough, but starch, corn, high moisture corn became a reality. But ground corn and high moisture corn here, we can grow the crop and harvest with a certain humidity, or you can buy the corn, grind it, and then add water and make high moisture corn. And we finished trying to show you guys that the dairy producers, it really use hostings. I showed that the semen come from US and Canada, so they know what's going on in terms of genetics around the world. They visit the World Dairy Expo, they see the cows, they really want to have the best cows here. And you can see that they have 12,000, 13,000 kilos in a lactation in Brazil. It's not easy. So they really work well with bunk space management, time that cow lay down, heat stress, good feed, buy and sell well. And it's a profitable business. Dairy in Brazil, if you do well, is a very good profitable business. And that make me really proud because as a software distributor, AMTS has been able to help a lot of these nutritionists to help these producers to get even better. And one thing that I see from AMTS that they listen to the producers, they listen to the nutritionists, and they change. And it's been changing 3-4 times in a year, which is really good. Okay, so again, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm here to try to answer questions. If I don't, I'm going to pass to Tom because he's our specialist. And hope you guys enjoy a little bit of question and answer here.
All right, thank you. Let's see, to launch in, Hudai, you wrote a question in the chat window. Do you want to ask that on your own? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think there are lots of similarities between Brazil and Turkey. You know, that's what I understood from your presentation. First of all, you know, I would like to congratulate you about a very good presentation. Now, I thought that I was in Brazil. So, you know, I would like to learn about that. What is the meat and milk consumption per capita in Brazil?
Okay, very good. When I put this presentation
because
together,
you are the very good producer here. There, you are producing in the beef production. You are number one, and the same in the milk almost. So you know, I would like to learn this.
Okay, so when I put this presentation together, I try to give you an overview of the Brazilian agriculture, agribusiness for sure. And one thing that is important is the income per capita of the population of the country, because that's the main source of the feeds that it produces is Brazil. Although we are number one or number two in terms of export of several agricultural commodities. And what impact the income per capita of these people? It's a lot of things, but mainly politics. And I end up my presentation because I think everybody needs to be part of your life is to help your country get better. We had 13 years of politics that they really stole a lot of money from our population. It's the biggest theft since capitalism was invented. And that impact a lot our income per capita of the population. So they did not have money. So when they don't have money, meat is something that they really kind of goes down in terms of consumption. In general, in Brazil, we have 3 meals. The morning, the breakfast, it does not have meat, but it does have milk, very common. The second one, it's around noon, it's our lunchtime. It's very common to have rice, we are a source of carbohydrate, beans, a source of protein, little bit of salad, and some meat. So meat is present there. However, when we don't have enough money, we're gonna cut on that. Okay, and we have a dinner, or like at 6 or 7 p.m. we have a dinner, and usually is a little bit of leftover from what's a lunch, and they cook something. But in general, during the dinner, we don't eat meat. So basically, like, just like a marketing campaign that US had for beef. Beef is what's for dinner, or beef is what's for lunch. So I don't have the numbers on my head, but I know the whatever people eat per head, or per people per person. It was good few years ago. Was one of the biggest. The Brazil used to eat a lot of meat, but because of the government, it went down. And the other thing is about milk. Milk compete mainly with soda, and when it's hot, people drink a lot of soda and decrease the consumption of milk. But the consumption of milk is really helps a lot the indirect products like yogurt, cheese, pizza, and all the other things. We don't drink a lot of raw milk in Brazil. We start the Brazilian. We have a association, dairy producers called Brazilian Association, which is the president Geraldo is my friend. He's doing a great job, and he's trying to push to have just like a market campaign, like US had the milk mustache, to increase
Yes.
consumption of milk. In fact, my uncle has a milk processing plant, and he would talk about that a lot. If we can increase the consumption of milk 10, 20, 30%, it's not going to be enough milk in Brazil. So that's what I try to help a little bit to understand a little bit more. So in addition, we have import and export. We don't export much milk, but we have challenges between Mercosur, which is like your European Union, that we block the import. We block Brazil to import powder milk, dry milk, but they can import through Argentina. So they buy, they send to the dry milk to Argentina, and from Argentina to Brazil is just one block. And I'm not blaming Argentina. I really like, and I have friends, they're good people, but it's a challenge sometimes, mainly when we have a lot of milk in the market, because the price of milk goes down, and really impact income over feed cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank-
maybe
go
the
ahead.
last question is that what is the population in agribusiness in Brazil?
Our population in the Brazilian population is 210, 220 million people. But we had in the past a movement to move from farms to go back to the city because of low income in the farms. Then later on, we had a different movement where we just discussed last week that there is a say in the farm that said, if you don't study, you're gonna go to the farm and you're gonna do manual things, just like cut grass and stuff like that. Today in Brazil, we said you need to study to understand all the technologies, the softwares and BI and drones and everything, so you're able to manage the farm. So things change. We have a lot of people that now move back to produce, but I don't know what's the percentage of population that live in the city, what is the percentage of population that live in the farm. But I can tell you, Brazil is a big farm. Basically, Brazil is a big farm. 0.5% of our GDP came from agriculture. 10% of our GDP came from livestock production.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Marcelo, you indicated that not a lot of dairy products are exported. Are you feeling any sort of influence from the countries that you're exporting to regarding the ways or the types of crops you can grow to feed animals, anything like that? Like here in the US, we have encouragement not to use GMOs. in things that we export. What do you feel on that?
Oh no, we don't have that. It's just like I said, that we have a minister of economy today, which is really really smart. And he said when he became part of the team, I'm gonna open up the economy. I want to make business with anybody in the world, but it needs to be good business. So and today we have also Minister of Agriculture, or Secretary of Agriculture, that came from, really has a lot of background understanding what beef producers, dairy producers, corn, and so far they need. And they did open economy. So we make business with any country that's under the law and has a good agreement, because that's good for the country. We allow GMO. We use all the technology that, to me, it's a great technology, so we can increase productivity, and we don't decide on get penalized because you do GMO. The same thing would be with RBST. Brazil is probably one of the countries that use more RBST in the world. In fact, US is not using anymore. You only have one kind. Brazil have two kinds, and we know it's a safe milk. It doesn't impact our hormones or kids' hormones or anything, and increase productivity. So we think about it. Wow, if it's good, it's going to increase our feed efficiency. It's going to bring more money to the farmers. Why not to use? Same thing with GMO. We know that European countries, they usually don't like. I don't want to discuss if they're right or wrong, but because they're buying. So if they're buying, they can select which table they want to sit. And we sell if they can buy. But we do a lot of business in terms of agriculture with Middle East countries, like Egyptian, a lot of, I think the world do business with China in this kind of country.
Okay, thank you. Bill, can you, do you have some thoughts that you want to share with us?
Sure. Excellent presentation, Marcelo. I really enjoyed it. And it's gratifying to see that Brazil is a very good student of the world dairy industry, and you have certainly captured the best technologies and concepts from the world over, in fortifying your industry. So kudos there. But here's a question. As you look at the world industry, and let's look at the United States, for example, we go through the same swings of production increases and price falling, and our government's strongly involved in milk pricing with milk orders. But aside from that, we get into situations where the cost of production may exceed what we get paid for the milk. And this puts us in a very difficult situation, obviously. And milk has become a commodity, except by those producers that are now reinventing milk as something different, like the Fairlife products and things of that nature. Are you looking ahead to secure markets for your surplus? And if so, as an export, or are they going to try to control volume? I mean, how are they going to position themselves in the future so you don't get into the same surplus situation that a lot of other parts of the world have with milk, where the price falls as it becomes commoditized?
Oh, I think so. It's a very good question. It's a very interesting question. I have Geraldo, which is the president of Brazilian Association, is my friend. We have been in talks together, been traveling together. He lives in Brasilia, which is Washington for US. Mm-hmm. And I know what he's thinking. And we talked to the big dairies. In fact, going to be having a webinar with Roberto Janke. It's a top 5 dairy producer in Brazil, and one of the guys that understand most about dairies that I know. What the industry share? Price control is not healthy in right. the medium time. It can help now, but it's really going to damage. Exactly. I don't want to make this analogies, but it's much like socialism. We need capitalism. And I understand they're trying to push more and more is to debureaucratize or take the government out of this commodity business as much as possible. Right now, we have a lot of taxes that are involved in producing anything in Brazil. We're a country that taxes a lot. In general, everything that you buy in Brazil, 50% is taxes. It would be wonderful if we could go back and use these taxes in favor of the population, but it's still not being done. And what I understand, the biggest move the Production Association is doing, and I see it's happening because I'm also linked to the National Dairy Training people, is first to educate people to use all the technology they have to produce the milk that's cheaper. We can do that. We can do today. There's a big population of dairy producers that are producing milk. They don't even know how much it costs. If you go to their farm and you ask how much it costs, they're gonna tell, it's $1 and 50 cents, and so far, there's not even close. And that's in general for small business. We need to professionalize them. So I understand is a huge potential to grow in terms of efficient first and produce the same amount of milk and make more money. But the other side of the movie is that, okay, so if it's increase the milk production, what's going to happen is just a commodity. And that's what compost barn did. Compost barn became a reality in Brazil 5-6 years ago, and producers just moved from pasture or whatever facility they have to compost barn, and they saw 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 liters, 10 kilos increase per cow per day. That was a lot of milk. That was a boom. And then we start discussing what we're going to do with this milk. And then there is a lot of, anytime that you have a difficult time in your life, just after you get that, you get better. The darker the day become, the closer it gets from the sun of the next day. So sure. It does good for the industry because they learn how to make a lot of new products. A2 milk came, a bunch of yogurt. Organic production is not important in Brazil. It's present, but it's not important. Cheese of all kinds. They started making business with different countries. So every business don't want to sell commodity because you don't negotiate. How much is the price of corn? This. Oh, but I just sell for that. No, corn is corn. Oh, but my corn. Okay, so if you have a different thing. But it's not an easy question to answer. I don't see us putting a cap on how much milk people can produce. Like Canada, for example, you buy cold. It's not necessary. We did still not move to control some nutrients in the land, how much the cows are excreting, okay, and how many animals you can put in our farm, because there is still a lot of land to explore, and there's no. In general, the producers, agricultural producers, they really respect the environment. We don't need to cut any tree to produce more. We have enough space. So I think it's a long question in terms of market. But one thing I can tell you, we want to make business with the world. We don't want to control. We don't want to put a cap. And it's going to be commodity for a long time. That I can tell you. It's not going to be a different product in terms of percentage of what we produce. But I know this big dairies, the first one that I show you, they produce their own milk, their own brand, the distributor. They do marketing just like JBS started their meat. Marfrig started their meat. You don't buy like a cut. It's not. We have different cuts from the world. We have like picanha, contrafilé, and just like a ribeye and stuff like that. Just don't buy ribeye. You buy a ribeye from JBS, and they advertise that not in the national TV. A ribeye from JBS is much better. You can taste better and stuff like that. And in general, ribeye is ribeye. Even if you have an Angus or a crossbred or a Hereford, in general. But when you work your brand, they can sell a little bit more expensive and make more money.
Sure. So a real quick question. Why don't you import flowery hybrid corn varieties? Will they not grow down there? Why is it all flinty?
For this question, I would like you to have you and Tom and with me drink a beer. before I answer, Mary, can you allow my camera here? I really like to see people here because I'm trying to put my camera on and it's not showing.
Yeah, give me a second on that. Most of the time we don't, but let me have to remember how to do this.
Well, one time there was in another webinar and I asked you something like that, and the organizer push a button that end the webinar for everybody. So if you don't do that.
Yeah, I know. I just have to find the right button. There we go.
Don't worry.
No, I think you can start now.
Okay, Dr. Bill, some time ago, I think 3-4 years ago, hi, now I can see everybody. Tom asked, well, Tom came here a lot of time and he's, we're missing him. But he's not, COVID is not allowing him to come anymore, but he'll come pretty soon. Hey, Tom, how are you?
And
we really like him.
Tom can go visit you too.
Well, we're going to make him come through the Mexican border and then go down to Argentina, and then we can pass in through Brazil. But we don't cannot do that because I know the Argentina, Paul and stuff would stop him there because they like Tom there too. We can share a week there and a week here. And Tom came, and I remember just like it was today, he was in a farm in Minas Gerais, and he grabbed some feces and said, man, this starch is still here. It's tough. It's hard. We need to get to something. And then we start talking with a company that's a flour, and we kind of start talking, but it's they trying to do some testing. It takes a lot of time, a lot of paper to get it passed. Anyhow, all the companies, Bayer, Syngenta, KWS, Pioneer, whatever you name, I work with them because I help them to analyze their feed. What we need to do in Brazil, they're not going to change unless the consumer asks for. And the consumer asking more because the hard ones, the corns with the high prolamine, they're hard for bugs to get inside them so they can store longer. And now the producers, they understand that now there's an understanding about 7-hour starch distributed and the KD starch, the KD of starch. And we place that on AMTS and show them how much milk or how much meat they can make if they improve starch digestibility. Even now, because now the price of corn is historical high and soybean is, I think we made some calculations, $300,000 a ton. I think US is about, if they calculate right, 200, 250. So if I were going to buy from US and bring to Brazil, but say, well, but China bought it first. So we're a little bit late. And we need to push the producers, and they're asking for, they know. But one thing that is kind of go counterintuitive and counterattack is that time of silo will help improve starch digestibility. So if you have a hybrid that's not so good in digestibility, but have 35% of starch, you get 15, 20 units of starch digestibility with 6-7 months. And so things start getting better. But I can tell you the companies are kind of looking to have their flour hybrids, and it is going to take some time. The main thing, and Dr. Undersander was my master advisor, co-advisor in Wisconsin. He's been running corn silage hybrids for years. Mm-hmm. In fact, he's going to give a talk today at noon, noon US Central Time. And he said, Marcelo, to select for hybrid corn silage, the number one thing is healthy. So a lot of times, just like you had the BMR corn, the BMR corn is wonderful, but a lot of times it cannot stand. You have here, we have here an opportunity, but because of the climate, the humid, and the sun, and a little bit of different population, we usually work with 5,000 plants, sometimes 60, sometimes 70. The bugs is going to impact if you have a hybrid that's not selected for the tropical conditions. Right. But I can tell you, it's a huge market because not only cows, but we're feeding in the feedlot way more animals. It probably is going to be another record for feedlot. So if they can use a corn silage that has a higher starch digestibility, they can buy less corn from the industry, and that's going to impact the cost of gain a lot and the cost to produce meat. So sorry to make the long answer, but that topic is a topic for beer, for sure.
There's no question the flowery hybrids tend not to have the yield of corn, okay? And that's what suppresses it here in the US when they're looking for dual purpose, so they can take it to grain or take it to silage. But there's no question that we see a benefit in terms of milk production when we do have it. But disease pressure is certainly another factor, even here in the US with BMR, you know, so yeah. I was just wondering, though, there's nothing to restrict it from coming in, though, right? It would be allowed to come in if people wanted it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And one thing that we're doing, we have this farm with, is a good friend, they're the nutritionists, and they lease a farm, 3 nutritionists. They said, wow, if I'm telling my clients how to do, now I'm going to prove I can do. And they're doing well. They're cutting 80 centimeters for corn silage, just below the cobs, so they're really doing the topless, and they have a really good corn silage. They're producing 40 kilos on average with very little of corn, and now corn is really expensive, so they're making a lot of money. So there are other opportunities that can help it too, but for sure, in general, for producers that don't know that a flower endosperm with low prolamine, with good production, so we want a milk per ton and milk per hectare,
right?
It'd be very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marcelo. Tom, do you, before we close out, I don't have any more questions. Do you want to give some comment and share some of your experiences and exchange with Marcelo what some of the challenges are that you see when you're working down in Brazil?
Marcelo did really well on doing all of that. You know,
yeah.
It's the potential heat stress, you know, sort of like here, politics get involved, forage quality, you know, labor. That's really cool.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining this morning. Marcelo, we'll see you again this afternoon. Your connection was fine and great. So, and I can't emphasize enough how much we all enjoyed your presentation. Knew very little, and this really gave us a good overview. And I do want to thank Marcelo. He was the initial driving force behind these webinar series. It was his idea. And that first year that we got it going in 2015, it was Marcelo saying we should do this, and he brought us all in on it. So again, thank you everyone for joining. And this is recorded, and it will get posted up on the website when I get to the process of converting it. So Marcelo, I'll see you tonight. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And just a special shout out from Sylvia Baruch in Canada. She says she was originally from Uruguay, so I expect that she enjoyed this and it got her up to date on conditions down there. So thanks very much, everybody.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. God bless you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Paula will ask some questions from Argentina. Marcos, we're glad to have you join us. My colleague Lynn Gilbert had joined us, but she'll need to be leaving soon. So I am, Marcelo, going to switch over to the reading view so that you can tell me what slide you want to be on if you need to do any further explanation. So Marcelo, you made it again this afternoon. That's great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I hope other people can too.
Please move to the first slide.
Yes.
If you can, the first one. Yeah, well, the first one. It's really important.
The thank you slide?
No, the first one, yes.
This one, okay.
No, the first one. The first slide that you have in the presentation. The first one.
This one with your face.
Yeah, that's the only time my face is handsome because of Photoshop. So leave it there.
Okay.
No, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's a great team, great people. Tone, I don't know if he's around this afternoon, but always helping us. The AMTS is a great software. We're trying to increase the use in Brazil. It is increasing and all over the world. And to me, I really tried to put together the best that I could. Of course, I really thank Professor Marcos, and thanks so much that he's here. He helped me a lot, has a lot of things that he can collaborate. And also Abra Leite, we're very proud also to be a member. We don't have a lot of statistics as US. So the best statistics that I got was from USDA, however, I would like to thank you, Marcelo Pereira, the owner of Milk Point, that we had some really good data from the top 100 dairy producers. And so thank you all. And first of all, Professor Marcos, that's here, he's an icon in Brazil. That when he came from US to Brazil, after that, now he has his own farm that he's a farmer. So he's a nutritionist, a farmer, veterinary, consultant, extension, a professor, whatever. And he has been able to help to create a lot of grad students that become professionals. And still, we have a group in WhatsApp that you can ask anything that he'll be happy to discuss. So it's a really great pleasure to have Professor Marcos here. And it's just like, I am a little baby compared to Marcos. If Professor Marcos was like, we have an NRC in Brazil, he would be the chairman. So I really would like, Marcos, if you feel comfortable to also answer questions, because I think you can add a lot to the question. So feel free to ask, but also feel free to answer, because I think the idea is to help people to understand and share what we have in Brazil. Okay?
Marcelo, he's an icon here too.
Oh yeah, well, the bad thing is I think he's going to spend some time in US and he's going to leave us to work on something. I don't know if Wisconsin. So, well, anyhow, we're going to, because of the internet and webinars, we still will be able to get his attention, but he's a very good guy. He helped us a lot to understand how to use corn, the flint, and the flour management. Important thing to test products. It's for the dairy industry, is a very important guy.
Well, that will be nice to have him with us. So that'll be super. Hopefully I can run into him someplace, much more likely than in Brazil. Marcelo, I am going to ask, actually, usually I defer to Paula first, or I would have Marcos go first, but I'm going to ask Lynn if she would like to ask her question first. She was in this morning's webinar as well. And she has a family that she needs to get to. So I'm going to say, Lynn, would you like to go ahead with your first question?
Sure. Thanks, Marianne, and thanks, Marcelo. That's a fantastic presentation. I think it really helped everybody get a good perspective of what's going on in the Brazilian dairies. Marcelo, do you have an idea of milk production in like high groups and average high groups in Brazil?
Like the high pens?
Yeah. How much milk are they producing?
The pen or the farm?
Either.
Okay.
Both?
You can do both. Yeah.
Well, just like I said, I'm not that old, and that's the thing. Professor Mark is older than me. See, that's one thing right there. When I graduated from vet school in 2002, a really good average was 20 kilos. We are in 2021, let's say 20 years after that, a good average 40, moving to 45 to 50. In fact, I have a really good friend in Minas Gerais in Passos that they're doing 40 with topless, with 70% forage in the diet. And these farms, to have that, they will have cows picking 55, 60 in the high bands. And Professor Marcos, please feel free all the questions, if you would like to comment and add, that be educational.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so
Lynn.
much.
Thanks. Lynn, go off and do what you need to do. Paula, would you like to start with a question?
Okay. Hi, Marcelo. How are you?
Good.
Okay. As I was listening to Paula, I realized how fast you speak English because she was speaking so fast. Okay. I will start with the first question. Which was the main issue solved by the use of the compost barns?
Which was what? I did not understand it.
The main issue, the main problem solved by the compost barns.
Okay. Well, it's again, Marcos, feel free to discuss that, but that thing is, there is no, in my understanding, there is no additive, there is no change, there is nothing you can do in a dairy farm that will increase 5, 6, 7 kilos of milk, which is a lot of energy per cow per day, every day, without increasing costing and improving feed efficiency. When we found or understood or discovered about compost barn, it was I was discussing about these days that we have a COVID-19, so many things going back to hard situations with high price of corn and soybean. And I always understood, Michael Jordan, Ayrton Senna, which is I'm really good fan of him, said, when you are in a bad situation, go back to the basics. So when Michael Jordan had bad times, which was not that bad, he would go back to the free throw and just centralize and get better again. So right now, because of COVID and all the prices, I always tell the producers, go back to check your diet. Could use the pain state and see how far the diet that you balance is from the diet that's there. If you have more than 5% variation, go back to the mixer. After that, you can do analysis on that. And after that, maximize forage and so far. So the basic thing is, it's really important for any business. And for dairying, the basic thing is just, give a good place where cows can be, they can lay down, relax, and ruminate. That will make you make more milk. And we did not have that. Our freestalls, and all over the world, not just want to blame Brazil, it's a busy stall. It's not a free stall. It's just like a highway in some of the countries, or some of the cities in Brazil. So they did not have, first, they had the sun under them, which is increased the body temperature. That's heat stress. Second, they have flies that you cannot eat if something is bugging you. Third, if they don't have a place to lay down because there's almost mud during half of the year. So they did not have the basics. And most of these cows too did not have bunk space. So when you just change the base, they did not have to give anything. You didn't have to give them protect methionine, lysine, organic chrome, improve metabolism of protein, look at milk fever, nothing. Just give me a place to lay down, relax, a space to eat and take my milk as fast as you can. Compost barn allows that. Compost barns allows that. So it moved from heaven from hell, basically from hell to heaven. And so when you do that, the animals just do what they're supposed to do. They improve their productivity. And I think the chicken and the poultry and the swine industry learned that a long time ago. Brazil learned it. That was really, really good because if we put a lot of milk in the market. Now that's always the other side. We always need to be like a judge, listen to the guy that's being accused and listen to the prosecutor and see what's going to happen, because what we're going to do with all this milk. But that's not our question, Paula. I tried to answer your question.
Okay, thank you. Marcelo, I'm going to ask a question, and Marcos, if you would join in on the answer, and then perhaps also share some of your thoughts. The question is, what are the major metabolic issues Brazilian dairy farmers face during the transition period?
Okay. Do you want to go first? I can go first. Let me go first.
Yeah,
What?
I was going. Sorry, Marianne. Sorry, Marcelo. I was going to comment on Paula's question on the
Okay, go ahead.
issues for compost barn. Can you listen to me? I'm okay, right?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I think thanks, Marcelo, for the talks. I think you try to cover a lot of things: politics, economics, environment, and like cow breed, and it's very difficult in that short time. But I think you did a good job now, showing that you have small farmers, big farmers, and one's a social thing, the other one is food production, and I think you tried to do a good job and showed a lot of that. I just want to make a little comment on the compost barn. Like Paula asked us what would be the major issues, like in my opinion. Like compost barn has growing a lot here, especially in the west part of Brazil, the central part. And like they are usually new like confinement cattle regions. They don't confine cattle they have not confined cattle for a long time in these regions. They used to graze a lot of cows there. And compost barn has gained a lot of like credibility. A lot of people like it. A lot of people tried free stalls in those new regions and it did not work well, like some technological issues, although the biggest farms in Brazil use free stalls. Okay, so but compost is a new thing and it's growing a lot. And it's working. Okay, like Marcelo said, you take a cow from pasture, you improve nutrition, you give comfort, and the same cow produces more, and the farmers like that. One issue for me is nutrition, like basic stuff, like how to use like PMR wagon, ration balancing, like because these farmers they did not necessarily did it before. They used concentrates, but they did not formulate diet. They did not feed cows indoors. So I think for me it's a challenge, right? for our scenario. The other big challenge for me is as a management issue is the bedding issue and how to dry it. Okay, it's like you have good nutrition and good bedding. You have a system that's working, and bedding is an issue. Like some people have been using wood shavings. In some regions, they use a lot coffee house. Okay, so and how you manage it. And in some areas of Brazil, it's not easy. That's why the growth of compost barns in the south is not that high because they have more moisture, have more rain, so it's not easy to dry off the bedding material. Has a huge potential in the northeast. The dry region of Brazil is very, very easy to work compost barns on that region. Some people here, they have used like tunnel ventilated systems. It makes even more difficult to dry the bedding. The result is like you can have like compost barns with 8 square meters per cow, and you can have compost barns using 16 square meters per cow. Okay, so you need to adjust the number of cows at the end of the year. Marcelo showed at the end of the year we have rain and the moisture, so it's more difficult to dry the bedding, to manage the bedding on that part of the year. Some farmers, they're making money with the bedding. They sell it for composting, for organic producers and things like that. But for a lot of people, it's just make manure management much easier. Like people that have coffee plantations and compost barn, for me, it's like a perfect wedding. Like your wedding, you get the coffee house and you turn compost to the coffee. So it's and the cows, they did not used to give anything to the coffee. Okay, like the cows always gave manure to the coffee, and the coffee would not give anything to cows. But now coffee is giving the house, and the system works really well. So there's a lot of compost in places with Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais is about 30% of Brazilian milk, and it's also the highest producer of coffee. So that's one reason system is growing. But bedding, I think, is an issue. Like you need really to think if it's viable, how much it would cost, how much you need, how many cows you can have per square meter of construction, because like the roofs and the feed area is basically the same as in a freestall. And life is different. The management of the bedding is different than the management of the bedding of a freestall. It just changed the work. Like you don't stay without work, but it's a different work. You need to to plow the bedding, to aerate it during milking, and like manure management is completely different. But I would say that nutrition and how you manage bedding are the key factors for success. Nutrition would be the same as for any confined cattle, but some people, they don't go for the compost because of the bedding issue. It can be a problem in some places. Some people work it really well. Some people have been using only for heifers. That's fantastic because the production of manure and urine is much smaller. So bedding management is much easier. Some people like have free stalls for cows and compost barn for heifers, like hosting herds in this case. Right? But and when you go with cows to the compost, usually they start changing the breed. Like if the guy was a crossbred breeder, then he goes for hostings, and there is a transition for that. And it happens also, and change how you manage your life, your employees, and what kind of work you have. So I think it's a big change, and it's growing.
Marcos,
Okay.
Marcos, in
Yeah.
those farms where they're perhaps putting heifers on compost and then having a freestall with the lactating cows, do you see any difficulty with the heifers actually adapting to freestall conditions, or do they become alley rats?
No, I don't see that, Mary. It's very nice because the management of the bedding for the heifer is very easy. Like you don't need to plow for cows, you plow the bedding. If you milk 3 times, you plow 3 times. Okay, for the heifers, you can plow like twice a week, something like that. And the challenge for us is we have a tick-borne disease, like anaplasmosis and babesiosis, and when you go completely for confinement, you get rid of the ticks, so you need to deal with that. Okay, but for management, it's very nice, it's very easy, and you can put a lot of heifers per square meter because they don't they don't have the production of feces of a cow. So and they adapt really well. Some people, for example, they use compost for transition cows only also. They calve on the compost barn and then they go to a freestall. Okay, see, it seems to work also, but very few people here have the heifers on freestalls. Okay, the most common way would be to have heifers in paddocks. And it's not always good because you have mud at the end of the year. You have same problems you have with cows. You don't have mastitis, but you can have some also. So would be going for a paddock system, like a kind of an open barn, and then you go to freestall. This way you go from a compost to a freestall. But really, I don't see that's an issue. Like actually, I see better growth rates and younger heifers, bigger heifers. Sometimes you have over-conditioned heifers because we have a lot of corn silage. So some people like introducing grasses just to lower the energy content of the diet, or they get too fat. But it's a very nice option. It's growing a lot. I think even more than the option for cows. As I said, some people, they have freestalls and they're going for compost for the young animals, and so it's really nice.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask a couple quick questions. Marcelo has let me know that he needs to leave at in a little over 12 minutes. But that Marcos could continue on with questions if we have more from them. So I'll try to get through these next 2 that I have, and then I know Paula had some. So What are the major metabolic issues dairy farmers face during the transition period?
I'm sorry, Mary, because I'm in a place that I'm 1 hour behind Brazilian time, and I messed up my whole. I had 3 webinars today, and
Oh
one is
gosh,
on
yeah.
what was in your time, and the noon was at the central time, and now we went back to, and we moved from one state to another.
I thought, yeah, you said you were on the move. So
Yeah, but life is good. Life is good.
good.
Thanks so much. And Marcos can comment. It's a great comment. Like I said, he lives that. He knows what he's talking about. Well, my understanding of the major metabolic disease, and I can tell you because of data that I also published on the Journal of Science, and that was some work done by the University of Wisconsin veterinary team, Dr. Ken Ardon and so far. I had the opportunity to take that class. Production medicine was really good. I'll just give move one step before I say that. To me, one of the biggest challenges is the cows get fat, and they get fat in late lactation, so they get fat when they're dry. I had the class in Wisconsin, and there was one professor that said, the perfect cow would be 3 score, body condition score 3 all over, shouldn't change. The change that make things difficult in everything in management. But my answer would be calcium metabolism. More than half of the farms in US, they have a subclinical calcium level below, and I don't want to say it's 8 or whatever, but there's some people that will discuss that, but below a good number. So they have subclinical hypocalcemia. When you have that, everything's not working in a cell because a cell needs calcium. So beta-hydroxybutyrate and NIFA, you're going to have the problem with that. You're going to have dysplasia bone mass. You're going to have a high somatic cell count. You're going to have mastitis. The reproduction is going to be impacted because of the embryo need calcium. Everything is impacted, and that's just the bottom part of the iceberg that people don't see. They just see the tip. So, on my understanding, although we're getting better in terms of how thin or how fat the cows are. And I saw in Wisconsin at the animal science barn, a lot of cows calving 2.75 in a good environment, good quality feed, they're producing a lot of milk. And when I saw the 3.25 and 3.5, which I thought was the good ones, they had some metabolic problems and disease and stuff like that. So, well, what's going on? They're too thin. Anyhow, my answer is hypocalcemia. It's a challenge that the world needs to learn, because calcium is in all the cells.
Okay, thank you. Marcos, do you want to add to that, or?
No, Mary, I think that when you talk about hosting, let's talk about hostings. Like problems are basically the same as everywhere. Like we have hypocalcemia, we have retained placentas, ketosis, DAs, and like the causes of cow culling in confinement system in Brazil are basically the same as everywhere: reproduction, mastitis, feet and legs. So we're basically dealing with the same issues, and I don't think we use lots of grasses. We don't have in the south you can have temperate forage, but most of the people, they don't use very high potassium forage. Like corn silage would be the major source in all the grasses. So like we don't have alfalfa or ryegrass in large use. In the south you can have, but not in Minas Gerais and in other places. So it's not difficult to control clinical hypocalcemia. Like the use of anionic salts is very spread, and a lot of people use that. So basically, I think we suffer the same issues, like cows that don't eat post-calving, retained placentas, and it's the same thing, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Paula, I've got a couple of questions left in my windows, but I'm going to come back to you in the event that you want to ask of Marcelo before he goes, or if there's something that Marcos could handle.
I really don't know. I think both of them could answer the
Okay, Paula, or they were already answered. Your volume is not very high for me, and I think I see Marcelo struggling too. Okay.
There?
That's better, yes.
Okay.
Did you have no more questions?
No, yes, I have. I thought you were asking first. Okay, I go with the one question. It's about, Leandro is asking, can you explain us a little bit better what do you do with the high moisture corn to increase digestibility?
Okay, if I understood it right, what we do with high moisture corn to increase digestibility?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's really a lot of data showing that if you want things going to change in starch from corn silage or corn itself, during the silo, it is starch digestibility. The other things, like fiber mainly, there are a lot of discussion, mainly due to also the dry matter, the general dry matter going to 30 to 40. If you go outside this range, things can happen, but from 30 to 40, I think, you know, the work done by Dr. Shaver, Ferrareto, Professor Marcos has done a lot of work about time of in silo and starch digestibility and response in cows and fecal starch. And so there's really, I think, one thing that the word can tell. If you grab a feed that has starch, and usually we will do corn silage or corn grain, you can buy it, grind it, add water, or you can produce in our farm, or sorghum, which is usually is going to be our second crop due to water challenge or rain challenge. If you leave it there, starch, the prolamine is going to get broken down with time. Soluble protein is going to increase, ammonia is going to increase because of this restructuring that's happened there. With that said, that will allow the starch to ferment faster if you compare 1 month versus 1 day, 2 months versus 1 day, 3 months versus 1 day, up to 7 months. That's usually, you can get better starch digestibility after 7 months, of course, but you need to see at the tangent how much you're gonna get and how much interest you have it there. So there's one thing that is really well established. If you leave your feed in a silo, and it doesn't matter which silo it is, it will help to improve starch digestibility. The data from Ferrareto, and maybe Marcus has different data, but that's, I think, US corn. 1 day is 50% starch digestibility in 7 hours. When you look at 7 months, it goes up to 75% starch digestibility. So the same amount of this feed that you feed to the animal, you're gonna get more metabolized by energy, metabolized with protein. That, of course, you do some correlation, you can go back and see how much milk you're gonna get, but doesn't mean the cow is gonna produce it, because you can use the energy for maintenance, for growth, for body temperature score, for memory glands, growth, and so forth. But what happened is just improve in starch digestibility because of the restructure of the prolamine, the main protein that's there. That's really well known. That's a fact. Okay, and that's big. That's important.
Okay, thank you. Paula, do you have more?
Yes, I have one more.
Okay.
Marcelo, you talked about liters, milk yield as liters. Can you tell us something about milk solids and which are the recommendations you are having to prevent milk fat depression?
Which are what are the milk solids average and what are the recommendation we have to prevent milk fat depression?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think if you ask anybody in Brazil how much dry matter intake it is, they're going to tell you 20 kilos. How much milk is the average cow? 30 for high, for medium high. And solids, they're going to tell you 3.5 for fat and 3.1, 3.2 for protein. we can really do much better, and our farm is doing much better. Solids, it's very good to produce it. However, and I showed you guys, most of the milk is not being paid by solids, but just by volume. And it's my understanding, because of that, just like in the beef industry, you don't get paid most of the beef by grade, just like you guys have choice, select, and prime. They just get paid by kilos and age, and if you're a heifer and if you're a steer. After USDA starting using the price, prime, select, and choice system, then the system changed. The producer, well, I can make more money. It doesn't mean that we don't have industries or a milk processor that doesn't pay. Yes, we do have, and I show you guys that happens, okay? But not very often. What you can do to prevent milk fat depression mainly is going to be the main challenge. Milk protein usually is going to be there, but the main challenge that we try to help is milk fat depression. If we just think about where this fat's coming from, usually 1/3 is going to come from the diet the animal's eating, and if you don't do anything, the diet's going to have 3% ether extract. But now today we're talking about fat acid. 1/3 can come and will come from the body of the animal, long chain fatty acid. And if you see a lot of fat in a postpartum, because this animal is mobilizing a lot of fat. And the rest of that is going to come from de novo, synthesized in the mammary gland. That is the one that changed. That's the one that changed. And change do a couple things. Basically anything that change the pH in the rumen. It's going to allow for not the biohydrogenation to happen well. So some of the unsaturated fatty acids is going to go and act exactly in the cells of mammary gland to decrease the synthesis of de novo. What is, in my opinion, what are the main sources they will decrease? If you decrease 1/3 of something, you will decrease the whole thing. So what are the main causes that will create milk fat depression? Most of them, my understanding, is not really nutrition. Heat stress. Heat stress is one of the main ones, because the cow is in heat stress. She's not going to ruminate enough. She's going to end up produce enough saliva, and you're going to have a low pH. If you have a low pH, the bacteria are not going to be able to biohydrogenate. C18-1, C18-2 is going to go to the mammary gland. Management. If you put more cows than you should, and the AMTS has that in terms of managing the work of heat cramp, you're going to have slug feeding. The same thing with bunk space. You're going to have slug feeding. If you have slug feeding, you don't have 3 or 4 hours of pH below 5.8. You're going to have more time. So pH, effective fiber. How well your effective fiber is helping to help to control the pH in the rumen, and starch fermentability, because usually you do half and half on high moisture corn and ground corn, and a couple of things can change. So if you increase the starch fermentability, it can also kind of not help you to have a good pH. So most of the times, when I try to help, milk fat depression is a management problem, not a nutritional problem. But like Gary also said, when we would go to the farms in Wisconsin trying to troubleshoot milk fat depression issues, it's probably one of the main, the most difficult disease or problem that you're going to troubleshoot in a farm, because they have so many sources that can create milk fat depression. And in the US, they are get paid for. Here, most of the milk, they will not get paid, but once you get low, then you get discount.
Okay, thank you. Paula, do you have any more?
No, not by now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go back to one of the questions we had was actually answered. Thank you. How many lactations do you keep your cows normally in Brazil?
Well, it's and I think Marcos can really help me on that, because he has a farm. And one thing that we talk a lot now, not now, for a long time, is the productive life. Even when you select semen, you sometimes you leave milk production for the 4th or the 5th variable, and you select for a cow that's going to last more. And we usually, according to, it doesn't matter which calculation, it's going to spend 2 to 3 lactations just to pay back the heifer. And it depends on the breed, in my opinion. If you have a Holstein, you can keep her 4 or 5 lactations. And then 4 or 5, to me, it's the most profitable. But if you have a crossbred animal, you need to think about that, because her lactation usually is going to be shorter, and the payback is going to be a little bit different, but she's going to last also longer in terms of being the herd. So I would say 4 or 5 lactations and 2.5 to 3 lactations just to pay back. And finish that, I think Marcos can continue it. I think you guys in a great hands. I really like to thank everybody. And I made a mistake here, just changed this time zone, and I had something else to do right now. And but Marcos is going to be able to help better than me. Okay. Thank Mary. Thank you all. Thank Marcos. And I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Bye.
Bye. Marcos, do you have to add to Marcelo's last comment?
Yeah, I would say, like, for hostings, like if you have like 25 to 30% of replacement rate per year, is desirable, is good, like in any other place, I would say. I think we have a tendency to hold cows with problems longer than in other places, because the cost of replacement for a hosting is much higher here. So we cannot cull cows so easily as in the United States, for example. Like, so we tend to keep cows with lower production, sometimes with some somatic cell count problems. So we try to work cows with locomotion problems, because the money I get for a lactating cow that's being culled, I would need to cull probably 3 to 4 cows to buy a replacement heifer with 2 years. So
what is the cost of a replacement heifer?
Today I would be like, I sold 5 last week, was like 8 to 10,000 reais. Would be like $2,000 roughly.
Yeah, wow.
And even with good beef prices are really on the sky right now because of this dollar issue. And so we can call a cow, you can get like 3,000 to 4,000 reals. Like, so I would need to call like 2 to 3 cows, usually more, to buy a replacement heifer. So you don't cull cows so easily. You understand? Like, and it contributes to a lower production in the herd. Sometimes you can, sometimes guy keeps inefficient cows because it's not so easy to get a replacement. And replacement, the cost of raising the replacement is not cheap. Also, we need to raise them in confinement. They don't raise on pasture. This I'm talking with hosting. But if we talk about the crossbred herds, then the story is completely different. A lot of people milk cows with crossbred cows on pasture. So they mature slower and they last longer. They have much better reproduction. They are in a grazing system. So there's a lot of data there, but you can have like replacement rates around 15-20% per year would be, I think, not uncommon. But for hostings, it's basically the same. Like, we use American genetics, Canadian genetics as everywhere. In some places, people have been getting really high milk yield also. And so you have to say, I'll say, like, for example, for me, the difference between Wisconsin, California, and Florida is probably bigger than from Wisconsin and the south of Brazil. Or see, like, we all have these problems, and like different strategies, but the cows are basically the same today. If we talk about hostings, okay, as Marcelo said, jerseys are not so important here, but the crossbreds are. Okay? And like for small farming, it's a big issue for me, at least. Like, we can talk about the big farms, but the big farms, they don't represent a lot of people. in small farms. It's the major source of jobs in agriculture is dairy production, and they say it's the second source of jobs in the country. Is second, the first would be civil construction, and the second would be dairy. Like we have 1 million farms, dairy farms. So the social importance is there, and how you get adequate. Let's talk about cow nutrition. Like the strategies for this small farmer grazing crossbreds is completely different from the top farm. But everybody uses concentrates. I think that's the most important thing. Even the small farmer, like with 10 liters per cow per day, he uses concentrates. There's nobody that produces milk only on pasture. Okay. So that's why you need ration formulation a lot, because everybody is dealing with concentrates. So it explains why AMTS has a value here, and you think about that. Like if we don't produce milk totally on pasture. Some people graze. There are very efficient farms on grazing farms, but the farmers chose to close their cows. They chose the confinement because during the raining season it is very hard to work with big herds with mud and a clay type soil. We have a very moist summer, so a lot of people made this option, and it seems to be growing. That's why we said, like, compost barn is really something that is growing in Brazil, and the average milk production of Brazil, if I'm not wrong, increased more than 1,000 liters per year, like 2 years ago. The only explanation for me is compost barn and nutrition, because cows are basically the same. Like the average cow the average production per cow I think is around 4,000 liters, like the FAO number, and used to be much lower. And it was an abrupt change, like it just came in the new statistics, and nobody really knows why it happened, because it's data from all the country. But it seems to be happening. People, they're working, they're intensifying things. Like in some regions, we look at in some, like when land is expensive, like where we live, we look a lot at milk per hectare. Like, for example, with less than 20,000 liters per hectare, we're really in trouble here. Like good farms produce 40, 50,000 liters per hectare. And you need to be high because there are oranges, there are corn, there are soybeans, and so there's a lot of competition for land also. We're talking about central Brazil. Okay, like as Marcelo said, like if you think about the Amazon region, that's the frontier region. There are some people going there. I'm amazing. He was in the south of Mato Grosso selling AMTS. That's a beef region, like in the middle of the country. It's growing everywhere. But the traditional region is around São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. Like dairy has been here for a long time, and it's just spreading. And in these regions, like land's not cheap, so that's why confinement's growing, and you need to have more cows because to dilute costs, and to having a large herd during summer is not easy. So there are a lot of issues, and some New Zealanders, they came here, they're grazing here, but I don't know if they're doing as good as the Brazilians are. Okay, they don't use concentrate really well. They manage the grass well, but usually here you need to be a user of grain because everybody feeds grain. Even the small farmer can feed grain during the dry season when milk price is high. And during the rainy season, he turns the cows on pasture, but he uses concentrates at least half of the year. So some calculation needs to be done. Like inside corn has grown a lot, hydrated corn more than high moisture corn. Like some people have been hydrating sorghum also. So to change concentrate cost, to really affect concentrate cost. But there's a lot of things to learn and to improve, and our industry still needs to get more mature. I think we have a lot of people, and a lot of small farmers. I think 80% of the farmers still produce less than 50 liters per day. Okay, so, but those guys, they produce only 25% of the milk supply, but they are important as a source of jobs. And okay, that's a different thing for me. Like if you think about there in the United States, it's just food production, doesn't hire everybody.
Right.
Everybody's in town. But here, no. It's a very important social activity. And in agriculture, it's probably the only one, because if you go to the soybean industry, it's high tech like in any other place. Poultry, swine, the same way you grow poultry anywhere, you grow poultry here. But there is this difference. You involve a lot of people. You have the social importance, and you need to make nutrition for both. I see, like we have, I work a lot with high production cow herds, but because it happened, I don't know why. But a lot of people use with small producing herds, work with small producing herds, with crossbred cows, family farms, and it's completely different. Embrapa, the research foundation of Brazil, has been done a lot of work focusing on these small farmers, and there's like important nutrition for them, like use of sugar cane, the use of hydrated corn, and for the big ones is the same. Like we study the same things, like feed additives, like ration formulation, and have similar problems, but with a different scenario, like feed prices, milk prices. As Marcelo said, like solids are, every dairy plant pays for solid. Okay, he said that people is paid by volume. I wouldn't say that. Like in some places this is true, but very few people are paid only on solids. The premium for solids not that high. So, but some dairy plants, they like Danone, like they make, it depends on what kind of product they're making. But our biggest market share is milk volume. That's why some dairy plants still don't value a lot, solids. But there's always that milk price payment that he's shown actually is the one of the pays the most. It's the same, pay more for protein than for fat. That has been the story so far. And pay for bacteria, somatic cell count, volume, distance, fidelity to the plant, but you don't have no politics to restrict the entrance of dairy producers. So like the amount of milk in the market it's not completely coordinated. So you have depressions in milk price, and you have months of good price and months of bad price. It's pretty tough in a confinement system. In a grazing system, those guys, they deal a little bit more with that sometimes. For example, when the milk price goes down at the end of the year, during summer, we have pasture, more people produce milk, and people go to the beach and they drink less milk there.
Yeah.
So milk price goes down. Yeah, that's our story. Like schools go on vacation and you go to the beach. You don't drink milk on the beach. You change it to beer and to other things. And we produce more. Like this small farmer, they still produce more milk during the rainy season because the pastures are better. So milk price is not constant, and you need to play with that. But the milk price is highest during the dry season. So a lot of these more technified herds put cows to calf during the dry season. We want peak lactation in winter. Like the environment's good, like there is no heat stress, like it's better for the cows, and milk price is higher and feed cost is lower because it's just after the harvest of soybeans, of corn. So some people try to concentrate calvings in the middle of the year. Okay, like if we produce milk during the raining season, economically, it's very difficult to survive because we want to receive for that milk. Okay, like there is the market is flooded of milk. That's why a grazing system is a complicated system here. If you're seasonal here is not it's a good word. Like a small farmer is seasonal, but because it doesn't produce enough food for for the dry season. Okay, it's like it's like in New Zealand it's fancy. Here is not fancy. Like usually the industry value produces that produce milk when the market has no milk, and a lot of people try to play with that. Like that's why confinement is growing a lot. Like you keep the production more stable and you produce more milk when the market wants that. Cows increase milk yield during winter, and they lose milk yield in summer. So it's a market thing also. It's very complex to understand, but I think the industry is really going to more closed cows, more confined cows, but some people work grazing systems with success, but everybody uses concentrate. Okay, there is no grazing system without concentrate, a seasonal type system. You would be completely against the market. You would produce milk when the market does not want milk.
Yeah. So I have a question, and then I'll check and see if Paula has any more. But so this is about reproductive health, and he's wondering what is the cost of having an extra days open in Brazil in high producing herds. How many days in milk do cows when they get inseminated? Is it 80 days or more? And is the reproductive performance a problem in high producing Holstein farms? So kind of 3 questions wrapped into one there.
Yeah, like the decision how to breed a cow for the first time is usually after 40 days, 60 days, depends on the farm. It's a decision. The voluntary waiting period.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say a lot of people use 45, 60 days. Average days in milk in the herd, it's very hard to make to generate a cost on how much I lose by 1 day more of days in lactation. So I think it's a very tough calculation. I don't think anybody has done it really precisely here. But I would say average days in milk is not uncommon to be like 180, 170. Ideally, I would want something around 150.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, some people they keep more cows here than they keep in the US. It's much easier to cow a cow in the US than here. So our days in lactation is usually, I would say, is a little bit longer than everybody would desire. You just and because of the heat stress at the end of the year, some people the thing we have heat stress. Everybody knows that, but I think a lot of people they don't put in enough investment in controlling it. I think some farms they have the heat stress and still try to deal with that without like adequate fans, adequate sprinklers. Try to solve with shade only. So still have this kind of basic problems, and it can cause a lot of reproductive failure. If you look at the crossbred herds, that's the majority of the cows are crossbred. Like as Marcelo, if you go to the top farms, the major type of cow is a Holstein, but the average cow of the country, the average cow is a crossbred. Those cows are really good in reproduction, like because they have heterosis, like they're cross of Indicus and Taurus. They have really good health, much less mastitis, food problems. They're much easier to deal. That's why small farmers like them. Okay, like or you change the environment and put a high producing cow, or you put a cow that can deal with the sun, with the chicks, with the long distance to the pasture every day with sun, because it happens during summer. Like it's not a temperate country, like not like in New Zealand. You have and the other thing, when you have a good tropical forage, you're talking about 10 cows per hectare. Okay, it's not like 2-3 cows per hectare as in a temperate forage. So the stocking rate is really high. You produce milk per hectare, but production per cow is like 6,000 liters per year would be. I think it's pretty good. 6,000 per cow times 8 cows, 10 cows. Production per hectare is 50,000, 60,000 liters per hectare using concentrates, not on pasture only. It can be pretty efficient, but that's an option. Like The temper of the cow is difficult. The milking rate is low. There's low milkers. That's a big problem in big herds. That's why big herds go for Holsteins. But like you can have big herds with crossbreds, but it's not common. Okay, but for small farms, the crossbreds are the more usual kind of farm. But and they have good reproduction. If you look at the mean calving interval of Brazil, it's long. It's about 18 months. Why? Because most of the guys don't feed the cow as they should. Like these small farms, they have really basic problems, like nutrition problems. That's why if you look at the statistics of 1 million farmers, the number is not good. But remember that like 80% of these people, they're working. Right? That's very interesting. The part of Brazil with the largest number of dairy farmers is the Northeast, that dry region with the nice beaches. But they produce only, I would say, like 10, 15%. I think it's 15% of the milk of the country. But it's very important for them. They eat cheese every day. It's a habit for them. But it's a lot of small farmers. And in those very rural areas, you have cows only. Like you don't have soybeans and like swine and poultry in the Northeast. In many places, you have dairy cows, goats, and sheep. Right? So dairy cows it's a very traditional thing. It's been around for a long time, but it's changing. Even in the Northeast, you're having bigger herds. They have very potential for grazing because they don't have difference in sunlight. They're close to the equator. If you have irrigation there, you produce grass. I've seen some farms that they graze 12 months per year because as long as you have water. Mm-hmm. So, but in the South, you have usually a cold season and a warm season. In the south of Brazil, you get rain the entire year. So you basically have rain with cold or rain with hot, so with warm weather. So you can grow tropical grasses and then you grow temperate grasses. They do it a lot in the south, ryegrass, alfalfa. But the center of Brazil is tropical. So the dry season is really dry and there is no rain. And so we produce one crop per year. Some people two, I get 2 crops without irrigation. But with irrigation, you can get 3 crops. But without irrigation, most usually is 1 crop of corn, for example. But a very aggressive guy with very good soil management, no plowing and everything, we can get 2 crops, 2 corns, one after the other without irrigation. Okay? But I wouldn't say it's common. It's not that easy.
Okay. I think I have one more question, and then I'll let you go. It's been really great talking with you, but we're on a repro roll here. So what is the cost of insemination? And I'm going to lump all these questions into one. What is the cost of insemination and how many straws do they use per successful insemination? And do they use inexpensive semen just to get milk, or do they use more costly semen with the eye towards improving their genetics on the farm? And do they use sex semen? All these questions occurred to me as well. So thank you.
Okay, I'll try to generalize here, but
yeah, I think it's going to be vastly different between the farms from what you've said.
Yeah, that's basically a big difference will be between crossbred and Holsteins. Like for Holsteins, getting like 2.5 to 3 doses per conception is pretty good, like 30% conception at first service would be a pretty good number. In crossbreds, you can get 55% conception at first service, and services per conception is 1.8, 2. Cows produce much less milk, and they don't have like all the stressors of a high-producing cow, and it's a completely different scenario. And all about the use of semen, like you have more expensive semen for first and second AI, usually for heifers that have higher conception. Sect seeming have been used for heifers also. Some farms use for first lactation cows also, but results not as good as for heifers. But some people have been using, like do the first AI with sect seeming on first calf and then go for conventional. And so the price of the seeming depends on a lot of factors, like milk price is an issue. Almost totally the semen here is imported. Like Brazilian hosting semen has no importance to us. Like semen comes from the US, from Canada, mostly. The Netherlands would be the third source, but more than 50% is from the US. The breed that sells more semen is hosting, but not only for hosting, because the crossbred people, they use hosting semen also. Okay. So the semen comes from the US, and the issue of cost is like, I would say, it depends on what kind of cow you are making the breeding for. If a high genetic herd, it's a commercial herd. A lot of people have been using for health traits, like everywhere, like for a DPR of heifers and like longevity proofs, health proofs, like that's the we don't see a lot of people looking for big cows and like show type cows as in the past, but I think it's happening everywhere. And basically our semen cost is more expensive than in the US because we have the importation costs. Okay, so you actually need to have a blend, like you have a both for first and second AI, both for third and fourth AI. So have another bowl for heifers that have higher conception, can use a more expensive semen. With sexed semen usually is for heifers only. That's the recommendation of the dealer. If you're using for cows, I think it's your opinion. Like they would not support that. Some people have been using only for primiparous cows that I know, and the results reasonable. Like, but must be a farm with very good management, with like sanitary aspects controlled, like environmental control, and must be really good to use in cows. Usually it's for heifers only. Okay. I would say. I don't know if I answered. Like all right. There is no single answer. I would say.
All right. Well, thank you. I am going to thank everybody that was involved. Marcos, it's always delightful having your input on these. Paula and Paula, again, you guys are troopers. I'm not sure how well that translates, but you're the best. And I thank everybody that joined us. This will and is recorded. I will get it processed and upped. I can't promise it until after maybe the next 10 days. I've been working on a project for Paula, and I'm also have another webinar next Thursday. So thank you, Marcos, for joining us. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Paula. And thank you to all the attendees. Have a good evening, and we'll hopefully see you next month. We're going to Russia.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.